We're with the governor in his office in the State House. Governor, thanks for spending some time with us.
No, great to have you here.
Talk about,
I usually see you outside, but it's nice to have you come on in.
It is, well, you know what, it's almost similar as we tape this to the very chilly day 8 years ago when you took your oath's inauguration. What are your thoughts as you look back? I mean, it seems like a long time, and it seems like a
the
short
inauguration was a lot colder than this.
It sure was.
You know, standing out there and everybody, I think it was one of the coldest days in terms of weather-wise, but yeah, in some respects it seems like forever ago, and in other respects it seems like just yesterday, actually, Bill. And you know, we, as I think back, as we came in and all of the issues facing the state and what we've been, the ups and downs over the 8 years, it's kind of amazing, actually, because in the first 4 years, you know, we had a lot of challenges, but we were making you know, real progress, because one of the things I said, which some people mocked at the time, we set a goal of job creation. I said 20,000 net new jobs over the 4 years. By the way, we actually did hit that at the end of the 4 years. And, you know, we're moving along, and then all of a sudden, you know, the world changed.
The Great Recession started.
And yeah, and, you know, but we're not alone in that. And when I came into this, having lived in this state my whole life, Sue and I were born here, married here, raised our family here. We love this state. When I got into this, decided to run for office, I just sort of felt, which I still feel, we're suffering from decades of what I would call bad policy decisions, frankly, that have made the state not as competitive, have made public sector employment, for example, in the state or the cities and towns more attractive than private sector. That's not a formula for economic success, frankly, if you're incentivizing people to work for the public sector. And that's no aspersion to those people, but I just mean we have, for decades, built up, I think, costs we couldn't sustain, pensions and benefit structures we couldn't sustain, employment levels that could not be sustained, and as a result of that, had a tax structure that made us very uncompetitive. So we've been trying to turn all of those things in the last 8 years, and you know, and I think if somebody objectively looks at the pieces, we've actually made great progress, and I think I'm moving in a
very large
direction.
ship. That, like a cruise ship. Well,
Yeah.
when you were elected, one of the first things you had made, and I'm sure you remember it like it was yesterday, the big audit. Whatever became of the big audit, and did it lead to some of the things? I know you have said that over your time, a lot of reforms have been enacted that are ultimately going to save the state a lot of money. The big audit, though, that was your big thing. It was an unusual thing. Most people winning elections don't say, "I'm looking forward to the big audit," but that's what you did.
Well, that was all in the context of we needed to find ways to reduce the spending. And having spent my years in business, you do that constantly. And, you know, the good news is that act absolutely has worked extraordinarily well. I think all of our data, and we launched it immediately, it sort of morphed into what we call fiscal fitness. You know, everybody, you know, bump you up, we're going to get, and a lot of things came out of that, you know, one of the first things, for example, we changed the whole health contract that we had. At the time, Blue Cross was securing the state's health care plan, and the state was paying exorbitant rates for just the administration fee. So we went out to bid immediately, because I came from my company where we did that and we paid differently. And if memory served me, over the first 3 years of that contract, it was worth over $30 million of savings. I think when we total up, there's a whole website, I think we've done a whole report actually on fiscal fitness, and you know, if you look at over the 8 years, I think our estimate is that it's saved actually close to $1 billion over the 8 years.
You wrote in, and let me read from an op-ed to the Journal. This is what you wrote to the newspaper, that today's state government is leaner, more frugal, more accountable to the taxpayers than 8 years ago. We've enacted separation of powers, cleaned up resource recovery and Beacon Mutual, reduced state employees by 2,000, implemented pension and health insurance reform, rooted out waste, instituted efficiency over the years, and combined, we've saved the taxpayers $1 billion. You wrote that in the Journal.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true.
And that was part of the big audit.
Yeah, all of that grew out because we started with the contracts. Remember, we'd say we got rid of cell phones, all of the kinds of stuff you start doing, Bill. And then from that, went to the, you know, the co-shares, because when I came into office, state state employees, and I don't fault them. If they can get it, good for them, all right? But we're paying zero toward their health care, nothing. We're one of only 4 states in the country where that was the case. That's not fair. You know, the vast majority of the taxpayers out there are paying 15, 20%, some for small businesses higher. So we went on step after step after step. The health co-shares, remember the retiree health care, completely changed 3 years ago. The pensions this past year, third time we changed the pensions to reform those, draw back the cost of living adjustment, all of that. When you total all of those pieces up, it is clearly, you know, $1 billion over the 8 years, because, and we're running right now with the last count I saw, you know, like 2,000 fewer people than when I came into office. Well, the average pay of a state worker is $50,000. It's actually a little higher than that. That's just the pay. If you add the benefits onto that, it's close to 90. Well, 2,000 people at $50,000, $100 million a year. You add the benefits, another $40 million. That's $140 million a year, just in terms of the pension and the benefits and the savings in terms of operating the state more efficiently. It's put a lot of pressure on. I know that too. A lot of the departments have been scrambling, but every household is doing the same thing right now. They're trying to figure out how they operate on less. Because the people have had their hours reduced or out of work or whatever. Every business I know is doing the same thing. You know, they expect the government to do the same thing. Find out, figure out how you can get by on less instead of continuing to tax me more.
Speaking of such, you have an index card that maybe you can hold up for the camera there. They no doubt can't see it, but maybe hold it up anyway, and you can describe it. It's a star. Yeah. It's a star, and there's handwriting on there. And this was your. I mean, this is a pretty smaller playbook than you had at Brown University when you were.
No. This was when we first came in, because one of the things, if you go back to one of my State of the State first addresses, I talked about making Rhode Island a star in New England. I'm tired. I love this state. I don't like it being referred to as the laggard in New England, even at the bottom of the heap. And I said, to get to be the top of the heap, you've got to do certain things. And we talked about the 5 points of the star, and it all has to do with controlling the expenditures, grow the economy, education, energy, and keep it environment. It's all 5 E's, the 5 points. That's what we have been focusing on for the 8 years. I've been consistent, and on all of these fronts, we've made really huge progress. It's masked, unfortunately, because of the state of the national economy and, the fact that our unemployment rate's 11.4%. Who would have thought, 4 years ago that this would be where we are today? But, I think that it's hard sometimes when you're in the middle of what we're in to sit back and say, okay, let's talk about the progress and the things that we have done, the foundation that we have laid, if you will, for the future. And on all of these areas, and we could spend hours talking about education. We've recruited one of the finest commissioners in the country. She's setting all new standards in terms of what we expect out of our kids in terms of proficiency, but also the teachers in the schools. You've seen me out and around a lot in terms of all of the changes in the infrastructure. I think one of the government's jobs is to provide the infrastructure, I call it, the airports, the roads, the bridges, the things that you need for the economy to flourish. And we have invested, I lost track of the total, but it's well over $1 billion, probably $2 or $3 billion if you look at what's happening between the airport, the highway, 403, the new Secana Bridge. We just broke ground for the new Pawtucket Bridge. We're going to have commuter rail for the first time. When I first went to work at Oldstone Bank back in the early 70s, Bill, I used to take the train from East Greenwich into Providence to work, and then it disappeared. We're going to have, I think it's within a week or two, we're going to have the commuter train coming from Boston, stopping here in Providence, going to the airport. And this time, a year from now, down to North Kingston, right, your neck of the woods at Wickford Junction, and I predict shortly thereafter to Kingston. These are huge parts of, what I call the infrastructure that I think government's job is to provide that so that the state can, the economy can grow and prosper.
Well, speaking of the economy, when did it, much of your tenure is overshadowed certainly by one of the worst economic situations, certainly in Rhode Island since the banking crisis, and I mean, some say a lot longer than that, maybe even the Great Recession. When did it become apparent to you that we were in as bad of an economic situation? Because I can tell you when it happened to me. I think the first time that I saw a report from the Department of Labor and Training when unemployment hit double digits really was, and then saw some of the national coverage where Rhode Island was being portrayed as one of the areas that was hardest hit in the country. But when did it become apparent to you that the economy was as bad as it was and going to become a major issue, especially in your second term?
Yeah, we began to see it really toward the end of '07. All right, you could see the employment numbers starting to sag, Bill. And what happened to Rhode Island, if you look at what's happened nationally in this recession, Great Recession, whatever it's referred to, it was a real estate bubble, huge bubble that burst nationally, in fact, internationally. And we go on for hours how that occurred, but it occurred. And those states that were most heavily impacted were those states that had the biggest bubble. And when I say bubble, where real estate prices rose most dramatically. And Rhode Island, it's hard to remember back, okay, to what?
5 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to remember back to, well, '07.
Yeah.
You go back to '07, and you remember when you were getting valuations on your property from your local community saying, gee, I didn't think my house could possibly be worth that.
$1 million, right?
Could possibly be worth that, Well, guess what? It really wasn't, but people forget that. So if you look around the country, Florida, California, Nevada, Arizona, places that had big real estate booms, all right, were the ones that were heavily affected. And Rhode Island was one of those. For, I think it was a year or two, we had some of the highest appreciation in real estate prices in the country. We were coming from a lower base, but the point is, and that was, remember we had things like the historic tax credit. You had, it wasn't that long ago, you had cranes all up here, building
right
between,
around the corner here, sure.
Right up here with the addition onto the Weston, and when we sold that, built a new tower there, across the street here in the Renaissance, and all of the buildings downtown here. So we experienced a real boom, and so when the bust occurred, it hurt us, and I think that's what we've been trying to. Right now, we were actually starting before that, trying to diversify the economy of the state because we did not have a technology orientation. Remember, the last bust occurred in 1990 when the tech bubble, 2000 rather,
the
tech bubble, the dot-com bust. Well, Rhode Island we didn't have much of our economy in that. States like Massachusetts, California, other places really felt that severely. We didn't. We came right through that actually very well, Bill. But right now, we've been investing in those things. Let's take the universities, the knowledge, we call the knowledge economy, but in the sciences and the technologies of the future, and whether that be marine sciences, life sciences. And the good news is the taxpayers have been very supportive of investments in the university. We just got approval on the ballot for the new Center for Chemical and Forensic Sciences. We've got the Center for Biotechnology and Life Sciences. We've already opened. I was down there for the topping out of the new pharmacy building. Huge investment going into the brain power, out of which will be the technologies of the future. They're going to really propel the state.
We have the reputation of being governor first in, and you've lived here your whole life. First in when the economy goes bad, last out. Do you think that what you've been able to do will arrest that somewhat the next time things go wrong, where we won't be on the beachhead, if you will?
I believe it will. All right, these things take time. You don't change the economy of a state, overnight, Bill. But I think there are already signs that actually we're coming out of this. We're not seeing the unemployment rate come down as rapidly as I would like, but I think the data is showing that we are actually already turning, and we're coming out of this. We see our revenues up, our sales tax receipts are up, our income tax receipts are up. We ran a surplus last year. We're on track really this year to run a surplus. So I think the signs are there, and if we're successful in continuing these efforts to diversify the economy, get it more into the areas, as I said, of technology, innovation, the new areas, and built around the sciences, I think, yeah, the answer is we will be less susceptible and I think we'll be more resilient, frankly.
It's been a tough go, no doubt about it.
Hear it, and see it when you want it. On demand, audio and video at 630wpro.com.